Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going deep on the book of Habakkuk.
Habakkuk.
Yeah, Habakkuk.
Yeah.
A book that I feel like sometimes gets overlooked.
Definitely a little bit off the beaten path.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's such a cool book. It's this really honest conversation between the prophet Habakkuk and God. Habakkuk's basically laying out all of his frustrations and doubts about the state of the world. Kind of reminds me, of how we talk to our friends when things are going wrong.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So to set the stage, we're in ancient Judah, and Habakkuk is just looking around at his society, and he's really overwhelmed by all the injustice and violence he sees. And I mean,
He does not hold back at all.
he does not.
Some of the most powerful language in the entire Bible, I think, is in Habakkuk. He says things like, the law is powerless.
Yeah?
Justice is never carried out.
Oh, wow.
Justice is perverted. I mean,
Strong words.
he's just laying it all out there.
Yeah, and that makes me think, like, how often do we still see those same things happening today, in our world, in our society? These broken systems, people abusing their authority, the innocent being taken advantage of. It's not that different from what Habakkuk was seeing.
Sadly, it's a tale as old as time.
Yeah, and so I think that's why Habakkuk's response is so interesting. He doesn't just kind of throw up his hands and say, well, that's just how things are. He goes straight to God.
He does.
And he's saying, how long, Lord? How long do I have to cry out to you for help before you're going to do something, before you're going to listen?
He's like, I'm tired of praying.
Yeah. He's like, I'm tired of asking. I want some answers.
I want action.
Yeah.
Right.
And, I mean, isn't that the age-old question?
Mm-hmm.
If God is so good, if he's all-powerful, why does bad stuff happen? Especially to good people.
Right.
Why do the innocent suffer?
Mm-hmm.
It's a question that has haunted us, really, since the beginning of time.
Absolutely. And what's amazing to me is that God doesn't just shut him down.
Yeah.
He actually engages in this dialogue with Habakkuk. And the answer is not.
What he's expecting.
It's not what he's expecting. And it's a little terrifying, honestly.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So what does God say? Like, does he give him some comforting words, some kind of like pat on the back there, it's all going to be okay?
Not really. He basically announces that he's going to use the Babylonians
To do what?
to bring judgment on Judah.
Wait, the Babylonians, weren't those the guys known for being like super ruthless?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that is definitely not the answer that I think anyone would be expecting. Can you imagine how Habakkuk must have felt?
I mean, really, if you think you're living in bad times already and then God says, well, I'm going to use this other empire that's even more terrifying to fix things.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
It doesn't compute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what happens with Habakkuk. He's just completely blown away. I mean, he knows God is holy, and he's just...
He affirms that over and over again,
Yeah.
but it's just, he just can't understand
Why?
how could God use them.
How could God use a wicked nation to bring about justice?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does that even make sense?
It does.
Yeah, it's a good point. And so the dialogue, like, really gets intense,
Mm-hmm.
and Habakkuk pushes back,
Mm-hmm.
and he describes them. He's like, these Babylonians are the worst. He's like, their horses are faster than leopards. They're more alert than wolves at night. They swoop down like vultures on their prey. And he's just like painting this really vivid picture of how brutal and powerful they are.
Mm.
It's like they're a force of nature, just destroying everything in their path.
Absolutely, and he really lingers on their tactics.
Like what?
He talks about how they mock kings, they laugh at rulers, they can capture fortified cities easily.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah, it's a cakewalk for them. It's like
playing a video game.
exactly, like they take pleasure in this domination.
I'm starting to see why this book like still speaks to us today.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like we may not have literal Babylonians anymore, but there are still these power dynamics that play out on the world stage.
Absolutely, and it's tempting, just like for Habakkuk, to wonder, like, where is God in all of this? But remember, Habakkuk doesn't stop there. He keeps going back to God.
He keeps asking.
Yeah.
He keeps demanding.
Yeah, he doesn't just, voice his concerns and then walk away.
Right. It's not just blind faith.
Yeah, it's not just accepting whatever happens. It's like wrestling with God, trying to make sense of the world and the way he works in the world.
And trying to like understand his ways.
And that's what makes him such a compelling model of faith
Yeah.
because, he's willing to be honest, even when it's uncomfortable.
Okay.
And he's willing to challenge,
Back.
push back against what seems wrong. And I think that's a quality we could all benefit from today.
Yeah, for sure. So what happens next? Does God like get mad that Habakkuk is questioning him? Or does he actually give him an explanation?
Well, God's response isn't really a direct answer, more like
A redirection.
a redirection. He tells him, write this down, Habakkuk. Write this vision down. What I've decreed will surely come to pass, even if it seems delayed.
It's almost like he's saying, trust my timing. Even if you don't get my methods, you got to trust my timing. But what about the Babylonians?
Yeah.
Are they just going to get away with all this brutality?
And that's where it gets interesting. Instead of directly addressing Habakkuk's concerns about their unchecked power, God shifts the focus to their ultimate fate.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, these guys, these proud, greedy people who are relying on their own strength and exploiting others, they're going to fall. They're going to have their own downfall.
So like a sense of like poetic justice.
Totally. Like, what goes around comes around. Like,
Right.
yeah, they may seem invincible right now, but their fancy palaces,
Yeah.
their ill-gotten gains, it's all going to bring them shame eventually.
And God's saying they're going to get what's coming to them.
And the message is clear. You can't build an empire on violence and oppression and expect it to last forever. The wheels of justice may grind slowly, but they grind exceedingly fine.
Yeah.
Right.
That is a powerful message. And it's so true,
Yeah.
We see that play out time and time again, where people or even systems, abuse their power thinking they're going to get away with it.
Right.
But history shows us that's not how it works.
You reap what you sow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this kind of leads us to another really key moment in the book. We're transitioning from this back and forth between Habakkuk and God, all these questions and cryptic answers, to this really powerful vision of God's might.
Yes. It really does feel like this shift in tone from the dialogue that's been happening.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I hear you, Habakkuk, but I
Yeah.
need you to see the bigger picture.
Okay, so what's in this vision? What does he actually see?
So he starts describing this incredibly vivid vision where God's power and majesty are on full display. It's like a cosmic storm brewing with God at the very center.
I love it already.
Yeah. So he says God comes from Tidumon and Mount Paran.
Okay.
These places associated with divine presence,
Yeah.
and the wilderness and his splendor covers the skies, and his glory fills the earth. And he describes him as being as bright as lightning, and there's this, two-pronged lightning bolt flashing from his hand.
Wow. That's some serious firepower.
It's like, you're dealing with something that is way beyond
Human comprehension.
Yeah, our understanding, exactly.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that even nature reacts to God's presence in this vision.
Oh, how so?
He says the mountains are shaking,
How?
torrential downpours are happening, the sea shouts out and lifts its hands in fear. It's like the whole creation.
It's bona fide.
Yes, exactly. It's like
Yeah.
it has a consciousness and it's reacting in awe and fear.
I love that.
Yeah, and you see this throughout the Bible, this idea that all of creation recognizes the sovereignty of God. Even when things are chaotic and out of control, there's a higher power
Yeah.
orchestrating everything according to a plan that we may not fully grasp.
Right. So it's not just about God's power,
Mhm.
but it's also about his control over everything.
Yeah, even the stuff that seems random, like the weather or natural disasters, he's still sovereign over those things.
And I think that's what we see with Habakkuk, too. He may not understand why God's using the Babylonians, but he trusts that God is ultimately in control.
Yeah, he has this underlying trust that God's purposes will prevail.
Okay, so how does Habakkuk react to all of this? After seeing this incredible display of God's power, is he terrified? Is he reassured? What's going on in his heart?
It's a little bit of both, which I think makes it really relatable, right?
Oh, yeah.
The text actually says that he's physically affected by it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his stomach churns, his lips quiver, he's trembling. He's just like,
If I saw that, I'd be shaking, too.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then amidst this fear and awe, he actually expresses a longing for the day of distress to come upon the wicked.
So even though he knows that hardship is coming, maybe even for him, he finds solace in the fact that
God's going to win.
God's going to win, yeah.
It's like, he's acknowledging that things are bad, but ultimately he knows that good will triumph.
Yeah, it's like he's finally letting go of his need to understand everything and just choosing to trust.
Right, exactly. It's that surrender.
Yeah.
And that's where Habakkuk really shifts. He goes from this questioning and doubt to this place of surrender and trust. And he says, I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be happy because of the God who delivers me.
Man, that is powerful. It's like he's finally at peace.
Yeah.
Even though things are still, a mess,
Totally.
he's choosing to find joy and hope in God.
And that's really the heart of his message, that
Yeah.
even in the midst of difficulty,
Yeah.
you can choose joy and hope. And it's a message that I think like really transcends time.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like something that we still need to hear today because true faith isn't about not having doubts. It's about choosing to believe even when
You don't have all the answers.
you don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And you see this idea play out in his final declaration of faith.
Oh, yeah. What's he say?
He basically says, even when times are super tough,
Like what?
when the fig tree doesn't blossom,
Okay.
the fields yield no food, like when there's famine, when the sheep disappear from the pens.
So, like, nothing's going right.
Yeah, basically everything's falling apart, right? He's saying, I will still find my strength in God.
That is a powerful statement.
It is. It's like his ultimate security is found in God.
And isn't that so relevant for us today?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like we live in a world where things can change so quickly.
In an instant.
Yeah, there's uncertainty, loss, unexpected challenges.
But we can still find
strength in God.
Yeah, like no matter what life throws at you,
Mm-hmm.
you have this source of strength that won't fail.
It's not about denying our struggles.
Right.
It's about choosing to anchor our hope
Yes.
in something bigger.
In something that
Our circumstance. Exactly. And I think that's why Habakkuk's story is so inspiring, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't pretend that things aren't hard.
Yeah.
He acknowledges the pain, the
Mhm.
confusion, the doubt.
But he still chooses to trust.
Yes. He chooses to trust.
Okay, so we've talked about Habakkuk's complaints, God's kind of, surprising response,
Mm-hmm.
and his eventual declaration of faith.
Yeah.
But there's another piece of this puzzle we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
The Babylonians themselves.
Ah, yes. We can't just forget about them.
Right, yeah.
Because the book offers some pretty harsh critiques
Yeah,
of their behavior that, still resonates with us today.
absolutely. So give me the lowdown, like how are they portrayed?
So they're basically depicted as the ultimate picture of arrogance and greed. They're obsessed with power, with conquest. They're constantly trying to expand their empire through brute force. They're compared to fishermen, just relentlessly hauling in nations and peoples with hooks and nets.
Like they're commodities.
Yeah, exactly.
Just things to be used and exploited.
Yeah, just driven by this insatiable hunger for more.
More territory, more wealth.
Yeah, more everything.
And it sounds like they don't really care who they hurt along the way.
Not at all. And, Habakkuk is very upfront about calling them out on this, their disregard for justice, for human life. He talks about how they mock kings, they laugh at rulers, and they take pride in their ability to just, capture fortified cities like it's nothing.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like...
They've made their own power their god.
That's a great point, and he actually calls them out for their idolatry.
Oh, really?
He points out that they're offering sacrifices and burning incense to their weapons of war. It's so ironic.
It's like the ultimate distortion.
And those are worship.
Yeah, exactly. They're worshiping
Created things.
Yes,
Sure.
instead of the creator. And I think we see echoes of that today, right?
Totally.
Like how we can become so obsessed with power, money, status.
At the expense
of other.
And I think that's really one of the main points of this whole book.
Mhm.
The contrast between human arrogance
Okay.
and divine sovereignty.
Oh, I like that. Break that down for me.
Okay, so on one hand, you have the Babylonians who think they're invincible, right?
Mhm.
They think that their military and their strategies can overcome anything.
That they're in control.
Yes, they put their trust in their own...
Abilities.
Yes, exactly. And that's where the danger is.
Because we can put our faith in things that are so fleeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Like power structures
Mhm.
that could crumble at any moment.
Absolutely.
But then you have God,
Right.
who's the true source of all power.
The ultimate authority.
And it's not just that God is more powerful.
Right.
It's that his power is different.
It's a different kind of power.
Yes. Tell me more.
God's power is connected to his justice, his love. He doesn't use his strength to exploit or dominate. He uses it to protect.
The vulnerable.
Yes, to uphold righteousness and to bring about a world where justice and peace prevail. It's like a completely different vision of power.
And that's, I think, ultimately what Habakkuk's message is.
Mm-hmm.
Even when human systems fail,
Yes.
even when it feels like evil is winning,
Mm-hmm.
we can trust that God's justice will prevail.
Eventually, yes.
But that begs the question.
Okay.
Why does God allow all this bad stuff to happen in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, if he's all about justice,
If he's all righteous,
why is there so much suffering and injustice?
it's the age-old question, right?
It is, and Habakkuk doesn't give us a nice, neat answer, but he gives us a framework.
Oh, what is it?
It's faith.
Okay.
Not blind faith, but a faith that is rooted in trust.
Okay.
That even when we don't get it, when things look really bleak, God is working behind the scenes to redeem things, to make things right.
So it's not just about sitting back
Yeah.
and waiting for God to fix things.
Not at all. It's about aligning ourselves with his purposes, working for justice and peace in the world,
But also
trusting that his plan,
will ultimately prevail.
that makes sense. But it's still hard, right?
Oh, absolutely.
When you're going through something difficult, when you see innocent people hurting, it's easy to get discouraged.
Yeah.
To wonder if anything we do even matters.
It is. And that's why I think Habakkuk's final declaration of faith is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because he's choosing to rejoice in God.
Yeah.
Not because he's naive about the suffering in the world, but because he trusts that God is working.
Even when we can't see it.
Even when we can't see it.
Okay. I'm ready for the final part.
It's amazing how relevant, this ancient text still is.
Yeah, Habakkuk's struggle with injustice and, questioning God. And then how he eventually comes to this place of faith. It's just so human.
It's a story that I think resonates with people no matter what time period
Absolutely.
they live in, And I think one of the reasons it speaks to us is because it really gets at this question that we've all wrestled with at some point. How can we reconcile the reality of suffering
Right.
with the belief in a loving God?
Absolutely.
If God is all-powerful and all-good,
Yeah.
why is there so much bad stuff happening in the world? Why do innocent people have to suffer? Why does injustice seem to thrive?
It's the question, right?
It is the question.
The question of the ages.
Yeah.
And Habakkuk doesn't give us this easy,
Right.
pat answer.
Yeah.
But he gives us a way to approach it. He gives us a model.
Okay, so what is it? What's this model?
It's this honest engagement with God. It's okay to doubt. It's okay to question.
It's okay to be angry even.
Yes, even to be angry.
Yeah.
And what I think is so cool is that God doesn't shut Habakkuk down for being honest.
Right.
He actually engages in this dialogue with him. He allows him to vent, to question.
It's like God saying, bring me your doubts. Bring me your anger.
Yeah.
Bring me your fears. Let's talk about this. Let's wrestle with this together.
I think that's such a powerful image.
Yeah.
Because we're told sometimes, faith is about having all the answers. Doubt is a sign of weakness.
Right.
But Habakkuk shows us that it's okay to wrestle.
Yeah.
And it's actually through that wrestling, through that honesty, that we can come to a deeper and more resilient faith.
Yeah, one that can handle the tough times.
Exactly.
So his story isn't about finding all the answers.
No.
It's about learning to live with the questions.
To embrace the mystery,
Yeah.
the complexity of faith in a world that sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think that's a really important point because a lot of times we approach faith like it's a puzzle to be solved.
Right, like there's a formula.
Yeah, or like a set of rules to follow.
Like if I do all these things right, then God will...
Everything will be okay.
Yeah, or I won't experience suffering or difficulty, but true faith is more about a relationship.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's about trust.
And surrender.
Yeah.
A willingness to walk with God even when you have no idea where you're going.
That is so good. So if someone were to finish reading Habakkuk today, what is the one thing you would want them to take away from it?
I think I would want them to remember that even in the midst of chaos, when it feels like everything is falling apart, there is a God who sees you, who hears you, and who is working for good in your life. Choose to trust him, even when it's hard. Choose to find hope in his promises, even when you don't see immediate results.
That is so good. It's a message of hope, a message of resilience. It's a reminder that faith isn't about having all the answers.
Right.
It's about trusting the one who does.
That's good. That's really good.
Well, thank you so much for diving into Habakkuk with us.
Of course, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and to all of our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.